state your name and your occupation, please?
My name is Cindy Stevens, and I am a case manager at a mortgage servicing company.
Okay. And how long have you been doing that?
I've been in the industry for 22 years.
22 years.
I started in 1995.
Okay. From your position in your industry, what was the 2008 housing market crash like? What was that? How did that affect your job in particular?
Chaos. Prior to the crash, the mortgage industry was, the way things were done were very, very different. There was a lot less of a litigious atmosphere. An adversarial atmosphere did not exist. There was a more relaxed environment. What I mean by relaxed is comparing 95 to 2008 with 2008 to 2016. My job prior to 2008 didn't consist of me having to go to court and appear before a judge in a foreclosure process and testify and do that on a day in and day out basis. Going to trial didn't exist. You know, a servicer going to trial was unheard of. I did do it before 2008, but it was more of testimony regarding how the servicer I was working for was abiding by the statutes in different states and making sure that we were abiding by their rules regarding vacant properties or properties that had squatters in them or something along those lines. But
You weren't just based in Florida. You went to all over the country.
I testified in every state in the country except Idaho.
Really?
Yes.
Alaska?
In Alaska.
Hawaii?
I've been to Hawaii, yes.
Okay.
However, since 2008 and the crash of the mortgage industry, the environment is very litigious. It is very adversarial. Going to trial on a foreclosure case is an everyday occurrence. My job since 2009 has basically been going to trial. Back in 2009, you would go to trial, say, in Southwest Florida or Southeast Florida, and you would spend all day in trial. You could go and before lunch handle 35 cases. That was normal. Thankfully, that's not the case anymore. So since 2008, 2010, that area, compared to now, those 2 to 3 years, 2008, 9, 10, 11, were chaos. Now there is a lot less as far as the number of foreclosures that are being handled in the state of Florida. For a period of time, there would be reports that would come out from the different government agencies that would say California has the highest number of foreclosures in the nation. And then it was Illinois has the most, New York has the most. Well, then Florida had the most. And Florida held that ranking for many years. Not something to be proud of, it was just a fact. But now that's not really the case. We do have areas of Florida where there's still a huge backlog on the court dockets. It's mainly in the southern part of the state. But, going to court and doing 35 cases is not the case anymore.
So after the 2008 crash, you started having to travel the state and go to courts and testify and all that stuff. So before, what were you doing? Was it mainly inside? Like, was it just like a cubicle thing, or what was it?
Yes. Prior to 2008, 1995 to 2008, working in the default mortgage industry was you sat, everybody went to the office, and we had um, a specific digit or a specific state that each person in the foreclosure area handled. We would monitor those files, provide the attorneys with what they needed. They needed documents executed, we would take care of that for them. It was also a more of a cradle to grave scenario. I would go to work and handle my files from the referral state to eviction. So anything that happened during that process I handled, whereas now it's not handled that way anymore.
You mentioned there are, like, the southern part of the state is currently, I guess, considered worse off. Like, not necessarily worse off, but more, like, they have more foreclosures.
The because of the way that the courts in South Florida are handling their cases, there's a backlog. What is called a backlog on the docket. A docket is a court list of the process that each file has taken place.
Okay.
It's a public record. You can look it up on the internet. But there are several courts in South Florida that are very backlogged. It's not unusual to go in and have a case that was filed in 2009, whereas in Duval County, going into the court and having a case that was filed in 2015 is an oddity. We're up in Duval County, we're more current on our dockets.
Okay. From your position as a case manager and from handling all these cases, is there a specific area of Florida that seems to have recovered the best from
The most?
the most? Just from your knowledge.
Northeast.
Northeast? Okay. In what way would you say?
Fewer foreclosures. We've always had fewer foreclosures in the northeastern part of the state. The Panhandle has, in no way, shape, or form, has the load of cases on their dockets that, say, Orlando South has. Straight across the central I-4 down. Everything above Orlando seems to be in a better situation than south. And that's just from what I've seen.
Do you think that from your position, from what you've seen, that the housing market has gotten better? Is it still kind of on the bubble, or are we on the verge of another collapse, that sort of thing?
In 2008, basically what happened, if you really want to know what happened, watch the movie Too Big to Fail, or The Big Short. That's about as factual as you can get if you really want to see what happened. Those are the two movies you need to watch. If you're the type of person that likes visual aids, there you go. What happened in 2008 was the banks were allowed to lend money just arbitrary with basically no guidelines. This is just my interpretation of it. But people would go in and borrow money to buy a house at 100% financing with no down payment. Um, property appraisals values were higher than they should have been. Um, it was like a rodeo from, from what I've seen. Um, but because of it, people were put in situations, and people were put in situations as well as put themselves in situations that was not to their advantage. And so they borrowed this amount of money on a house that was worth this amount on paper, and then the bottom fell out of the market, and they owed this amount of money on a house that was worth this much. So they were underwater.
So
They were not making, and the loans that were being made were adjustable rate loans, which meant you borrow the money at a 3% interest, and then 2 years later your interest rate jumped to 8 or 9%, and that caused your payment to go through the roof, and you couldn't afford it.
but based on all of that, has it gotten better or worse, or has it not changed all that much from your perspective?
No, it's gotten better. And what got it better was the HAMP program, which is a government program that allowed the banks and the servicers to go in and modify these loans, bring the interest rates down to, I've seen some interest rates at 1%, but the normal was usually about 2%. So they took a loan that was $250,000 with a payment of $3,800 a month, because their interest rate was 9, 10, 12%, and they brought it down to a 2%. They took all the arrearages and put it to the back of the loan. And this is just me pulling stuff out of the air, because there are different guidelines. But they were able to take these loans and make the payment so they were reasonable and people could afford to stay in their homes. And because of that, a lot of people took advantage of that program and were able to keep their homes, keep their families in their homes. And that brought down the foreclosures. It brought down the number of loans that were in default, and allowed people to stay in their home.
Okay.